workers have been injured at Thunder Bay Pulp and Paper following a fire at the facility today. Good evening and thank you for joining us. A fire and possible explosion at the mill sent 4 workers to hospital with injuries.
Officials say the fire happened inside the hog fuel feed system at the facility. Trained emergency responders at the mill worked with Thunder Bay Fire Rescue to extinguish the blaze. A total of 6 pumpers were called to the fire, along with an aerial ladder. The Ministry of Labor said it was investigating a possible explosion, but could not provide further details at this time. Acting Deputy Fire Chief John Balabuck says thankfully the workers should be okay and explains the local involvement in the ongoing investigation.
The injuries are minor in nature, and we're hoping that everyone will be released or are released as of now. Our investigators with our Thunder Bay Fire Prevention Division have liaised with the Ontario Fire Marshal, and they're assisting whatever is needed.
There's no word yet on the cause of the fire, and the mill remains fully operational.
Another one of the 4 people accused of a murder in Westfort over 2 years ago has been sentenced to life in prison. 41-year-old city resident Derek Turner pleaded guilty today to second-degree murder. The body of 33-year-old Jordan Lapointe was found inside his Frederica Street home after first responders were called to a fire and explosion in October of 2021. City police later confirmed the death was a homicide, and Lapointe's family put up signs on the home calling for justice in the horrific case. Turner's conviction comes with a mandatory life sentence, but the length of his parole ineligibility is still to be decided. The defense is asking for 12 years, while the Crown is seeking 18, the same amount given to co-accused Michael Gomez in January. There's no word on when the judge will make a decision. 2 other co-accused will have their cases heard later this year.
1 person is dead following a single vehicle crash on Highway 71 north of Emo in the township of Chapel. Emergency services responded just before 1 o'clock yesterday afternoon. The driver was pronounced dead at the scene. Their identity hasn't been released, and police continue to investigate.
On Monday, City Council will discuss a potential increase to Thunder Bay's municipal accommodation tax. The 4% surcharge has been in place since 2018. The tax is charged to visitors to local hotels and motels in the city and has collected around $12.3 million in revenue. The proceeds are then shared equally by the city and the Community Economic Development Commission to support local tourism and organizers of major events. Councillor Casey Atraney is bringing the discussion to City Hall and hopes for Council's approval to have city staff look at increasing the tax. Atraney says she's confident it wouldn't deter travelers from visiting Thunder Bay.
In society, when we travel now, we don't even really, we pay attention to our bill and we say, what's this tax? But even if you go over the border, they have other taxes on top of what you pay for your hotel bill. And I think people are quite accustomed to that and used to that. If you want to travel across country or travel to our community, you're traveling here for other things. That 1% is not going to make that difference.
Atraney feels increasing the hotel tax to 5% would be appropriate, but she still wants to hear back from city administration. The tax in other Ontario municipalities ranges from 3 to 8%.
The Thunder Bay Public Library hosted its first public consultation session with the Council Composition Committee last night. Participants at the Waverley branch had the opportunity to discuss 5 important questions regarding the makeup of City Council. A diverse group of Thunder Bay citizens were split into 4 discussion groups to share their opinions. They went over everything from the advantages and disadvantages of ward and at-large based representation to whether a city councillor should be part-time or full-time. There was also discussion on how many councillors there should be and how they should be allocated. Council Composition Chair Rebecca Johnson shared how the event went.
This is a variety of opinions. I don't know what all the tables, of course, said, but the table that I was working with came up with the fact that we want less councillors. That's very clear. The table, again, that I was at, want to be elected at wards, and certainly looking at what kind of a person is running and what kind of criteria should we have for our councillors, which is not something that we had ever considered about criteria for councils. It's always been whoever wants to run. They have that right to be able to do so. So maybe that's something to think about.
There was a range of ages, genders, ethnicities, and cultures in attendance. Johnson says this was very important because the group represented Thunder Bay well. The next consultation session will take place at the Brody Library on Wednesday.
We're learning today that almost 200 complaints were received about extra billing for health services here in Ontario over a two-year period starting in 2021.
But the Ministry of Health is keeping the clinic names and doctors' identities under wraps. CTV's Siobhan Morris has the story.
It's a common refrain from the Ford government.
Anything to do with health, I can promise you one thing, you'll be paying with your OHIP card. You're never going to be paying with your credit card.
We know that's not always the case. Some practitioners do bill patients for services that should be covered, or extras like upgraded accommodations, medical devices, and patient transfers. Data obtained by CTV News through Freedom of Information shows between January 2021 and the end of December 2022, there were 183 complaints about extra billing in Ontario. 49 of those complaints substantiated. But the names of the doctors behind the rule breaking, where they worked, are being kept private.
Right now in Ontario, we have zero transparency and very low accountability.
The Ministry of Health says sharing more information could prejudice the competitive position of a person or an organization. But critics reason with so much money being transferred through OHIP, we should know more.
If you know that there's somebody watching, if you know that there is accountability for your action, as a human being, we behave better. It's as simple as that.
The calls for transparency have been getting louder as the province licenses more private clinics to perform procedures like cataract surgeries, knee and hip replacements.
If we find examples where individuals have been inappropriately charged for OHIP-funded services, there is a process where the patient gets reimbursed and the practice must be shut down.
Siobhan Morris, CTV News.
Today is World Water Day. Lakehead University marked the occasion with a learning opportunity for students interested in not only the academic study of water, but also its cultural and spiritual significance for Anishinaabe peoples. The university invited water walker Sheila DeCourt to share her teachings. On her first water walk, DeCourt joined the movement's founder, Josephine Madaman, on what was to be her last walk. Later, DeCourt says she was told in a dream to heal the waters of Thunder Bay from trauma after Indigenous youth were found dead in local waterways. She then started a group called For the Love of Rivers Water Walkers here in Thunder Bay.
Well, I'm hoping that the people here today will really recognize the importance of caring for the water and doing their part, because we all come from water. We're all made of water, so we all have a responsibility to protect and care for the water. So start making some changes.
I think the main thing is the important impact that humans have on water, and it can be positive or it can be negative, and so that anytime we engage in any fashion, we need to be asking these important questions about how will this impact our water.
Baxter adds the event is part of the university's commitment to bringing the environment, reconciliation, and Indigenous worldviews together for the Lakehead community.
Dozens of students in Lakehead University's Visual Arts program now have their artwork on display at the Thunder Bay Art Gallery.
Visitors to the annual Juried and Honors Students Art Exhibitions will see a variety of mediums, including paintings, digital art, ceramics, and Indigenous art practices. Jessica Clement has the details.
Sculptures, paintings, and other art pieces created by Lakehead University students are on display now at the Thunder Bay Art Gallery for the 39th annual Juried Student Art Exhibition. Featuring 54 artists, the exhibit gives students in the visual arts program a chance to showcase their talents and work. Curator Penelope Smart says the exhibit is a big deal for many students, as it's the first time they'll have their work on public display.
It's a really important show in our community because these are the young artists in our community. These are the students who are studying art at Lakehead, all different kinds of art, coming from all different backgrounds. And this is, for many of them, a first debut at a professional art gallery.
Gina Marin is a part-time student in the visual arts program who has 3 pieces in the art show, all centered around family. One of her pieces is a painting of her family home, which has been in Marin's family since the 1930s.
It was a big part of my childhood growing up, big part of the family. I took it over and I renovated it, and it was my dream to always do that. So it's just important to me. I've left it behind, so it was important to me to memorialize it in some way.
Marin says she feels like she's coming back to her roots of making art, and she's excited to share the gallery space with other artists.
Oh, it's huge. This is an incredible body of work. There's so many talented students in this program, and I'm really honored to be part of the show.
More artwork will be on display soon, as the Honors Student Thesis exhibit will be available for viewing on Friday. It will showcase works from 3 honors students, including Verity Beauvais, who says the theme of her work is mental health.
I'm looking forward to seeing people's perspective and views on my work, because I think it's really nice to see what people see in your work. Instead of just like going and looking at it, I want to know what they think about it.
The juried exhibition will be on display at the Art Gallery until April 28th, and the Honors exhibition will run from March 22nd to May 5th. Jessica Clement, TBT News.
The owner of a beloved local restaurant and catering business is hanging up his apron after 50 years of service in the industry. John Collins is the owner of Daytonas Kitchen and Creative Catering, which he has run for the last 17 years of his long career. As he retires, he's most looking forward to spending time at the lake and relaxing with his family. Collins says supporting the community has always been one of his key priorities. Sourcing products from other local businesses and treating staff like family is part of what made Daytona's and Collins' other endeavors so special.
I work with my family. I have my daughters here, my son-in-law is here, my granddaughters are dreaming of the day that they come and work here. And a lot of these people that have worked for me for many, many years, 10, 12, 14 years, I've got a lot of staff. We don't have a high turnover rate, so that was a good part. And you create relationships. And we've always said we're a family. This is what we are. We're a family-run business. And that's the goals that we set for ourselves, and that's what we did.
The restaurant will continue under new ownership as of April 1st, with some time then being used for renovations. Collins was happy to announce that the restaurant will remain in local hands, including individuals who have worked there before.
Today marked the official opening of the Soo Locks, which means the grain ships and other vessels will soon start arriving in Thunder Bay.
The first ship to enter the port this morning was the Samuel Risley icebreaker, and it was busy clearing a path for the 3 vessels that spent the winter here as they prepare to load up and leave the city. Joe Sadowski has more.
For a normal shipping season, it usually takes an icebreaker roughly a week to clear out all the ice that builds up during the winter. This time around, the Samuel Risley was able to clear lanes for the 3 wintering ships on the day of its arrival. Port CEO Chris Heikkinen says it's due to the abnormal winter Thunder Bay has seen this year.
The whole country has had a warmer winter, and we're no exception to that. So the better weather enabled passage through the locks, but also the lock engineers were able to complete their maintenance ahead of schedule, which enabled that as well.
With the pathways cleared, the 3 vessels are going to be loading up at the various grain elevators throughout the city and will make their way towards the St. Lawrence Seaway as early as Saturday. That makes room for the first ship to arrive this weekend, which would tie the record for the earliest arrival of a ship at Thunder Bay's port.
And we'll be putting on a traditional top hat ceremony for the vessel to recognize that vessel has opened up shipping in our port for another season.
The port is also expecting its first saltwater vessel to arrive within the next week or so, which would also be the earliest arrival of a foreign ship in the port's history.
We're actually looking forward to our first salty vessel to be arriving before the end of March, which is quite rare. Usually you see your first saltwater vessel sort of sometime in the first 2 weeks of April. But again, things are opening up a little ahead of schedule, so we'll be having another top hat ceremony later in the week next week.
Heikkinen says, all in all, it should be a very busy start to the local shipping season. Joe Sadowski, TBT News.
Now, Fiona, I've definitely been feeling that cold over the last week or so. Was it a little warmer today, though? Am I right by saying that?
We inched up
Little
about
bit,
3 degrees for our
take it.
high today, flirting with the freezing mark, which is always a nice thing to be considering how cold it has been. But today we topped out at -1, wind chills of -7. That was after actually a fairly seasonal overnight low of -11 and wind chills of -14. Didn't quite get as cold as we feared it could get. And today the winds have been light to moderate from the northwest, 8 to 33 kilometers an hour, with the clouds diminishing in the afternoon. Now, across the region, we were fairly consistent from areas to the west, Fort Frances, Dryden, Atikokan, and along the North Shore, and down into Wawa and Sault Ste. Marie. In the Sioux, they did have light snow pretty much throughout the day, more sunshine as you headed west, but the overnight temperatures were very consistent throughout this region. We saw lows of about -13, -14, so not too far from the norm for this time of year. At this hour, wind chills are ranging from about -13 to -14 through that same region. Where it gets much cooler, obviously, is to the north under mostly cloudy skies at this hour. They're at their high of -10 and a wind chill of -17. Last night, they hit -21. That's without the wind chill. In Greenstone, though, they were definitely the coldest place in the region. They dropped to -28 and a wind chill of -34 overnight. They're currently at -8. So all in all, not doing too bad. They've had lots of sunshine, but winds have been starting to increase to the north. Here in the city of Thunder Bay tonight, we are going to be a lot cooler. -21 and wind chills of -25 with just a few clouds. It'll start out a little bit gusty, up to 40 kilometers per hour, but then it will taper off in the overnight hours. Now, heading into the weekend, definitely going to get a sunny start. That's always good news for a Saturday if you've got to head out. Unfortunately, the daytime highs are going to stay below the freezing mark throughout the weekend and heading into early next week. And if you're still wondering how far we've got to go to get out of this winter-like weather, well, we're looking at snow by Sunday night, more so into Monday and Tuesday. So might want to keep those shovels and gloves and winter boots handy, folks.
Absolutely. You know what? I will not put away my shovel or my winter boots or my jacket quite yet. Oh, it's a hard pill to swallow. It is. All right. Well, when we come back, we will be turning our attention to two major national news stories. First, a developing story out of Moscow, where at least 40 people are dead and hundreds are injured in a shooting that happened at a concert hall. They are calling it a terrorist attack. And secondly, we have breaking news from the UK. After weeks of speculation on Princess Kate's whereabouts, she has finally made an announcement saying that she is undergoing preventative chemotherapy for cancer. So we'll have those stories and more as your Friday News Hour continues.
This, of course, came as a huge shock. And William and I have been doing everything we can to process and manage this privately for the sake of our young family.
Major news out of the United Kingdom regarding the mystery around the health of Catherine, Princess of Wales.
Today, Kate, in her own words, announced a cancer diagnosis. CTV's Andrew Johnson tells us more.
It has been an incredibly tough couple of months for our entire
Just seconds into the first public message in months from Catherine, Princess of Wales, the details of a devastating diagnosis.
In January, I underwent major abdominal surgery in London, and at the time, it was thought that my condition was non-cancerous. The surgery was successful. However, tests after the operation found cancer had been present.
Those shocking words and months of worldwide speculation over the disappearance of the 42-year-old princess and her health.
This, of course, came as a huge shock, and William and I have been doing everything we can to process and manage this privately for the sake of our young family.
Kate Middleton does not reveal in the video what type of cancer doctors found, but confirms she is now in the early stages of a course of preventative chemotherapy, and a hint of why the family stayed silent for so long.
It has taken me time to recover from major surgery in order to start my treatment. But most importantly, it has taken us time to explain everything to George, Charlotte and Louis in a way that's appropriate for them and to reassure them that I'm going to be okay.
Catherine's cancer diagnosis is the third to rock the royal family in 2024. King Charles revealed he had cancer in early February, about 3 weeks after Kate's surgery. He has stepped away from his public duties during treatment. And Sarah Ferguson, Prince Andrew's ex-wife, has a serious form of skin cancer.
We hope that you'll understand that as a family, we now need some time, space and privacy while I complete my treatment.
On the day the public learns of the latest royal scare, the Princess of Wales closes her message by reaching out to others in the same shoes.
For everyone facing this disease, in whatever form, please do not lose faith or hope. You are not alone.
Andrew Johnson, CTV News, Vancouver.
A warning now about disturbing images in our next story. There's developing news out of Russia today. Several gunmen dressed in combat fatigues and carrying assault rifles burst into a concert hall near Moscow, killing at least 40 people and wounding more than 100 others. It's being called a terrorist attack, the deadliest in Russia in years. The gunmen threw explosives, setting off a massive fire. There are still fears that people may be trapped inside. Moscow's regional governor has declared a tragedy. And in the U.S., the White House is urging Americans in Moscow to take precautions.
The images are just horrible and just hard to watch. And our thoughts, obviously, are going to be with the victims of this terrible, terrible shooting attack. And our embassy there put out a notice to all Americans in Moscow to avoid any large gathering, concerts, obviously shopping malls, anything like that. Just for their own safety, they should stay put where they are and stay plugged into the State Department for any additional updates and information.
To Ukraine now, where Russia has launched one of its biggest missile and drone attacks yet in its invasion, killing one person and injuring at least 14 others. Russia fired 88 missiles and 63 drones in a massive strike against Ukrainian infrastructure. A massive rescue operation is underway in the Zaporizhia region. The country's largest dam was hit, leading to blackouts in several regions. The state hydropower company says there's no danger of a breach. Fewer of the missiles were shot down by the Ukrainian Air Force than normal, which may signal the use of harder-to-shoot down hypersonic and ballistic missiles.
China and Russia today vetoed a resolution in the UN Security Council that called for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza. This veto prompted this response from the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations.
So let's be honest, for all the fiery rhetoric, we all know that Russia and China are not doing anything diplomatically to advance a lasting peace or to meaningfully contribute to the humanitarian response effort.
The resolution that was proposed by the United States called for an immediate 6-week ceasefire to protect civilians and allow for the delivery of more humanitarian aid. Russia's ambassador to the UN had urged Security Council members to vote against the resolution, saying it effectively gave a green light for Israel to mount a military operation in the southern Gaza city of Rafah.
Fish harvesters in Newfoundland and Labrador have reached a deal with the provincial government to end days of protests.
Yes, it is about time. Yes. We got it done. We got it done. Every fish harvester in this province got it done.
The deal allows fishermen to sell any species to out-of-province buyers. It comes after hundreds of protesters demonstrated outside the legislature as the budget was being tabled.
Saying goodbye to Brian Mulroney. Today marks the end of 4 days of public visitations for the former Prime Minister. His body is lying in repose at Montreal's St. Patrick's Basilica, ahead of tomorrow's state funeral. Here's CTV's Heather Butts.
In the heart of Montreal, St. Patrick's Basilica is rich in history and culture. It has served the Irish community since 1847, a community the former Prime Minister cherished. Honoring his Irish heritage, the family chose this space for 2 days of lying in repose.
So there's close ties, but the Irish tie is obviously very significant.
In happier times, this was a space marked by celebration for the Mulroney family. Ben Mulroney was married in the chapel. His younger brother Nicholas had his confirmation here. Today, the signs of sorrow and grief on the face of Mila Mulroney, honoring her late husband and comforting family before greeting visitors for a fourth and final day.
It is remarkable for the individuals that come in to pay their respects because they're not necessarily expecting it.
This has offered Quebecers a chance to pay their respects, sharing their gratitude as they grieve alongside the family.
He did a lot of good deeds for the country, but also for the the First Nations communities or Indigenous peoples in Canada.
I'm a little emotional because, as we say in French, c'est un grand personnage. Normally do for people that we highly respect and regard.
The state funeral set for Saturday is expected to be comprised of religious elements, along with music, several eulogies, and personal moments. A farewell not only to a former prime minister, but a husband, father, and grandfather.
Without giving it away, there's a lot of personal moments in the funeral itself, with the readings, with the song by the granddaughter.
A procession will leave from here at St. Patrick's tomorrow morning and travel a few blocks to Notre Dame Basilica for the funeral. A final farewell to the former